All right, this was another huge album for me this year.
His fault, he forgot him.
Yeah, I forgot him. This was one of my favorite albums that came out this year, even though I had to lay it down for a little while after I was really super into it. This is the second cover, the lame version. Danzig's second album, Danzig 2, Lucifuge, is... he actually took a foray into kind of like blues doom metal. There's a lot of very bluesy guitar work on this album. It is a pretty dark album as well, but it was just like, man, it hit the spot when it came out for me. I loved it. I was very into Glenn's vocal style. I liked that it wasn't a super technical album. It's very simple in its delivery, but Glenn is just a good songwriter. He's got strong songcraft skills, so it just really, it worked for me completely. My big cuts on here, most of them, but I'd say my absolute favorites were Killer Wolf, Her Black Wings, Devil's Plaything is probably my favorite. Blood and Tears is great. It runs like a 50s ballad. You could have heard it on an Elvis album, you swear. It's just a great album. 777's a great song too. There's a better version of the cover, but I'd have to look it up. Fuck it, I'll look it up. Because the original cover I think is super cool, and I don't know why they changed it. It's kind of got that first Doors album look.
Yep.
And it's colorful. It's not black and white. I don't know why they changed it. I found a copy with the original cover. It was like a German import or something. But it's a solid album if you are a Danzig fan, for sure. I would recommend it highly. His first four are probably essential. First two are my favorites.
What's next?
Let's see. Number 10. We're up to our top 10. Do we have to take an ice cream break or anything?
Yeah, we'll probably cut this video. I'm sure it's getting long, but all right. So number 10. This is definitely a me thing. So this is, like I said, a year that I was heavily into the Christian music, and I was looking for heavy bands. I mean, I had already liked Stryper. I told you, I found the Holy Soldier, which I dug.
This was not your typical Christian band.
But this was not your typical Christian band whatsoever. I was driving, and I knew this band before I got rid of all my secular music. Because this was in 1988, 89. I was driving a truck for a interior design company, driving furniture and carpets and this kind of stuff.
You mean like a CDL type truck?
Yeah,
you had to have a CDL for?
Big box truck, yeah.
Oh.
So anyhow, I was driving the truck.
I did not know that.
I would drive it from New Jersey to New York, New Jersey to Philadelphia, and anyhow, whenever I ran across a record store or a Christian bookstore, I'd stop and look for stuff. So I went into this one store and I came across this album. It was just brutal. I had this hand that was pierced with blood all over it. Yep. And I popped it in. Remember, they always had those little listening decks in there. And I popped it in. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to buy this. I loved it. So that was Human Sacrifice, and I wore that tape out. I bought it on cassette. Anyhow, a year later, 1990, they came out with their second album, and it was this one, Once Dead. This is an original pressing. It is autographed by all the original members, given to me by Larry Farkas. But
I love that they used the Ozzy Diary of the Madman font down here for the title.
And when I redid it, I used the same font.
Awesome.
So. But in any case, I bought this again from the same bookstore that Robert works at. And I couldn't wait for this thing to come out. And so the day it came out, I was there, picked it up, got in my car. I still had a cassette deck in my car, and I bought a CD. So I couldn't play it, but I thought this cover was hilarious when I first looked at it. I mean, I guess it's got spiritual meaning behind it. Basically, being born again. So your first life of being born again.
Like as a zombie, though.
But you're like zombies and they're all dirty and stuff. And the reissue of this, if you're into this album, the reissue of this is so cool because it's got a whole section about the album cover and how they created it. Because the guy who did the makeup for this is some famous Hollywood horror artist guy.
Oh.
And he supplied us with a bunch of really cool photos of them getting their makeup on. And
cool.
You see it all behind the scenes. Very cool. But anyhow, this is very raw, very aggressive, but very much different than Human Sacrifice. Why? Glenn Rogers wrote most of the songs in the first album, a lot of the songs. This album, it's a mixture of Larry Farkas, Doug theme, and Roger Martinez doing all the writing. So
Okay.
yeah, it's raw, it's intense. I love this song.
So
These songs.
what song
Honestly, I sang almost every song on this album at one point or another when I was singing for this band.
Can't Get Out.
Can't get out.
Oh, Space Truckin's on this one. That's right.
Yep. And I thought
You didn't cover Can't Get Out, did you? On Ultimatums?
no, we did Warfare, the first song.
Warfare.
What are we
Okay.
in? Warfare. What are we in? Warfare. We played it live for like 2 years after we did it too, because everybody always wanted to hear it. So
Yeah, I forgot about Space Truckin.
yep. And I love Space Truckin' too. It's a ridiculous version of the song.
Yep.
Roger Martinez's vocals are just ridiculous. But were you there when that Larry Farkas was telling us about the story about? We went out to dinner one time with Larry Farkas, and he's telling us a story about how Roger, I think you were there, how Roger came into the band and did some vocals for him. He's like, oh man, his vocals were awful, so we had to get them.
Yeah, that's like the Nacho story. You remember? I think it was the same night.
I think it was.
Larry's going, oh, those nachos look disgusting.
Yeah, the waitress
What do you have? Oh, the nachos.
Yeah, exactly. Waitress walks by with this big plate of nachos for the table next to us, and Larry's he's got the best facial expression, and he's like, "Oh man, those nachos are disgusting." And then the waitress comes up and says, "What?" He was like, "I'll have the nachos."
I remember that because Justin was there too.
Yep.
And we cracked up over that one big time. Okay.
Anyhow, great thrash album. So,
all right, that was number 10.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9. Number 9. Oh man,
This is mostly you too.
Oh well. I love this album as much as that one. We talked a little bit about this when we showed the Recon. This is the second album from Deliverance. This album was huge for them. Their first album was great. This album, I think, is just as good. George Ochoa from Recon joined the band, and him and Jimmy Brown wrote all these songs together. They did a video that became pretty big on MTV. Got played quite a bit on Headbangers Ball, and then when Lars Ulrich was the guest VJ on one of the metal shows, he chose this as one of his favorite songs and favorite videos, so it basically exploded for them.
Yep.
So they were touring constantly for this album.
And I remember this was 1990, so let's say I started investigating Christian metal around 91, 92. And I remember this was recommended to me. I went into a store and a guy recommended it to me. And I remembered the cover and everything, and it just was not something I picked up. I never really listened to it. I don't think I really get into it until I met you, and I was in Tychus and everything. Then I started re-exploring some of this stuff. The one track I do remember really digging was 23.
Which is an oddball track on the album. It's a little different.
It's very Metallica.
Yes.
Very.
But not
like Fade to Black kind
Fade
of
to Black Metallica, yeah. Not like, early thrashy Metallica. So.
No, it was ballady Metallica.
Which I would describe, I mean, if you're a fan of the melodic Metallica stuff, like Metallica meets Queensryche, that's how I would describe this album.
Yeah.
And a lot of people call it a thrash album. To me, it's more of a speed metal album because it's got very clean, high vocals. Oh man, the vocals on Flesh and Blood are just raging high. And Bought by Blood as well. Bought by Blood, the vocals are very, very high. Matter of fact, that song, Bought by Blood, was originally written by George Ochoa for Recon. Recon never recorded it, so it ended up being recorded with Deliverance.
Oh,
so
okay.
There you go. But when I saw Recon several times, they always played that song, Flesh and Blood. Bought by Blood. It's not a concept album, but it kind of has a theme that runs through it of spiritual warfare. So there you go. Slay the Wicked is a great song too. I just love this album. Greetings to Death is actually an early demo. It's the only old song on here. That was one of from their early demos. Matter of fact, the demo was called Greetings to Death, and I believe that was their 1987 demo.
Awesome.
And that album, I literally have like 6 or 7 different vinyl copies of.
All right, we are on number 8, and I was never really a big fan of this band, and I'll tell you why. What it started out was I was in DT Seizure at the same time these guys were breaking, and they always felt like competition. And I don't know, I just took it weird. Pantera, Cowboys from Hell, this broke them nationally. This made them huge.
Yep.
And I liked it okay when it came out, but again, like I said, it felt like competition. But the Red Hot Chili Peppers felt like competition too at that time to us, even though it was completely different sound.
I remember when this came out, a lot of people thought it was their first album.
No, it was like their 5th album.
Right.
But their first 4 were so different
The
from
first
this.
1, 2, 3, 4. This is their
5th.
6th album, right?
No, 5th. There was Magic Metal Music, In the Jungle,
Projects
in the Night, Jungle Metal or something.
Yeah, you're right, because
And
it was
then
3
Power Metal.
3 albums with the original vocalist, and
Yeah, then one with Phil.
which was Power Metal.
Yeah,
and then
this one.
Okay.
So 2nd album with Phil, 5th album overall.
But a definite departure in style from those early
big
albums. The
time.
first 3 albums were more straightforward heavy metal.
Yep.
People call them pop metal, but man, I just didn't hear it. Whatever.
Totally different band,
wasn't-
really.
If it was pop metal, it definitely wasn't Poison.
No.
And Power Metal's freaking awesome. And man, Phil could sing on that album.
Yeah,
And then on here,
he adopted a new style that really influenced a lot
Yeah.
of singers, and I call it kind of an aggro kind of delivery, which personally I don't care for. I don't care for it, and I think that there have been a slew of bands that have imitated that style, vocalists that sing that way, and it took a lot of the dynamics out of vocals for me.
yeah,
a lot of the colors.
they kept getting more and more of that vibe going on. Like I call it the angry sergeant yelling at the lazy cadet style.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, the killer tracks on here for me personally, just as a casual listener, were the title track and Cemetery Gates.
And Cemetery Gates, he
Pretty
sings,
heavy.
and he sings on that song.
Yeah.
And he still sounds great.
Yeah.
I think it was probably one of the last. Well, I'm sure there was other parts, but that song he definitely sang on. But yeah, I mean the track "Cowboys from Hell," it's still played on rock radio today. I hear it on classic rock radio.
It was a track that broke them. Really,
So-
it just broke them huge nationally.
It is my second favorite album from them after Power Metal.
Pantera, Cowboys from Hell, 1990. Where are we?
And I think we put that in the top 10 more out of the fact that we thought it deserved to be for the influence,
Yeah.
more so than it being in our personal favorite.
No, it wasn't. I wouldn't put it in a top anything for me. I don't care for it, but I definitely understand the influence that it had. All right. Speaking of influence, this is number 7. Slayer.
Yep.
Seasons in the Abyss. Kind of a
Seasoning the Obese.
follow-up to South of Heaven, style-wise. I loved South of Heaven. It was a big album for us in DTC. I remember every one of us, as we took showers, we were all living together at that time, we'd be listening to South of Heaven when it came out. That was our shower music.
And there's just not a bad song on here. I mean,
No.
of course, I don't know if it's a big song, but Dead Skin Mask is probably one of the more well-known songs on here, as well as the title track, of course.
Title
but-
track's awesome.
Yeah, but there's not a bad song on here, and this is just raw, aggressive thrash. And we must like it a lot if I put it above Anthrax and Deliverance and Vengeance and all those bands that I love so much. So
Yeah, it was a
but
big album.
It was
in 1990.
It's Slayer, and the funny thing is, after this, they slowed down a little bit.
They did.
But this is just raw, fast. And it doesn't get the same mention as.
Rain and Blood.
Thank you. Yeah, Rain and Blood. It just doesn't. But
Well, I mean, up to Rain and Blood, Slayer were flat-out thrash. They were just, that's what they did. After Rain and Blood with South of Heaven, they started to chill and reevaluate things, and they tried some different things. And the same thing on this, really.
yep.
I think this is the last of the legendary Slayer albums, I'll say.
No, I think the one that followed it was too. I don't know.
I can't remember which one was after this one.
I'm brain farting. That's why I didn't say it. Why are we brain farting so much? It's because it's getting later and later. We've been up all damn
We're
day
getting
long.
older, too.
Anyhow,
We've been on the sun all day with children screaming birthday parties.
literally. But it doesn't matter. It's classic
Seems
Slayer.
like it
I mean,
is,
everybody. You guys know who Slayer is. Give me a break. Come on.
Right.
And oddly enough, I do have this album on vinyl. We couldn't find it in a reasonable amount of time. We were like, just grab the CD.
I mean, it's been 2.5 years since we did one of these. We're a little rusty in our process,
Yeah.
and
Apparently.
okay. Slayer. Where are we next? Okay, one of my last lame ones, which I was really upset about this one because I loved this album when it came out. It was a huge album for me. And I'm sure it was a huge album for a lot of you too. Alice in Chains, Facelift. I have it on vinyl at home. I have it on CD at home. Just forgot to bring them.
I don't have it at all.
No. Alice in Chains wasn't one of your things.
Nope.
But it's funny because Alice in Chains is like the missing link between metal and grunge. And grunge wasn't really a thing when this came out. They were a Seattle band, but they weren't really called grunge at this point.
No, they were touring with. They toured. Didn't they do the? They did the big tour with Anthrax and Megadeth.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah. They were still kind of
Slayer.
They had their feet in the metal camp for sure, and they still do. Really, I don't think they ever fully fell down that grunge rabbit hole. But this album broke them nationally. Man in the Box was a massive single. It's probably still their biggest single to date. I mean, huge. Who doesn't know Man in the Box?
Yeah. I remember hearing those other bands, Slayer and Anthrax, and talking about those guys being on that tour and think, uh-oh, things are changing.
Things are changing, and also, I've heard them talked about that it was really tough for them at first because the crowds are really hard on them.
Yep.
But they just marched out there and were like, fuck you, we're going to win you over, and they did. They totally did. I mean, to me, Alice in Chains is like the band that has had the shit beat out of them more than any other I can think of, except maybe Def Leppard, except Def Leppard they got kind of wonky after they got the shit beat out of them. Alice in Chains just got tougher, and they just kept going. And I have a great respect for this band because their music helped me through a very difficult period of my life, big time. But when this came out, the first track I heard from them was We Die Young. And my initial reaction was, damn, that kind of sounds like Armored Saint. Lane Staley reminded me of John Bush, who I always thought was a great vocalist, loved his vocal style. And there was this massive riff that he's singing over, and I loved it immediately. And the whole album, I won't say it's my favorite Alice in Chains album. I would save that for the next one probably. But there's not a song in here I don't like. It's very great songwriting, and you can't really outdo Lane's vocals. He was a real mainstay for the 90s as far as a unique vocal delivery. And you can't really imitate him easily either, I don't think. And Jerry Cantrell is probably one of my favorite songwriters of all time as well. So we got great songcraft going on, great delivery band-wise, and I just think it was just all the makings of something really classic and long-lasting, and I still love them. They're still in my top 5 favorite bands of all time. Alice in Chains, Facelift, 1990.
Divine Intervention, that was the Slayer album we were both trying to think of.
Is that the one with the skeleton like hanging on? Okay, I remember. And I'm not that familiar with it. I was like, that was Seasons in the Abyss was like my exit for Slayer, I guess.
I always liked SOD's take on that. Did you ever see their single?
Yes. Oh yeah, Seasoning the
Seasoning the
Obese.
Obese, yeah.
This was another big album for me.
Now, whereas he talked about these bands where he he talked about Testament, where he's like, I listened to these first few albums and I kind of dropped them, and this is where I wasn't Queensryche. I was a huge Queensryche fan.
Yep.
This is Empire, and
this was a big turning point.
I was in high school when the EP came out, and I bought the EP as a new release, and I loved the EP.
Same here.
And then The Warning came out, and I loved The Warning. I mean, I just ate it up. And then they came out with Mind Crime, and I was like,
Rage for Order. You forgot Rage for
That's
Order.
what I said.
But Rage for Order was real different too.
It was, but I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
But then Mind Crime came out, and it was like, to me, it didn't hit me like the other ones. It didn't have the metal left.
Right.
It was very commercial, very...
And this would be even more so, which is obviously Empire.
Empire, yeah, if we didn't say it. But
massive hit for them.
But I actually like this album as better than
Mind Crime.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say, like I said, I've said this before, and I say this so much because there was so much going on inside of myself. 1990 was a pivotal year. The band that I was in, for 3 years, I was about to exit it just when we were about to do something bigger than we had previously done. And this came out right about that same time, and I remember the opening track, Best I Can, was a real positive statement in kind of a, most metal wasn't making those kind of positive statements at this point. It was all darkness and oh my God, despair and all this stuff. But this one was like, yeah, best I can, I'm gonna rise above it and all that. And it really hit me because I was looking for that kind of a statement somewhere. And I just think because it hooked me immediately with that first track, I was more open to the rest of the album, and it's still one that I like to revisit. It's just a great album to listen to, and it's just...
And it was a commercial success for them, too.
Oh, big time. Silent Lucidity was a massive single.
Yep.
Off of that.
Was there any other singles on here that was...
I think the Empire was a single. Jet City Woman was a single.
Jet City Woman was definitely was, yeah. And then what was the B-side track?
Scarborough Fair.
That was also a radio. I don't know if it was a hit, but I heard it on the radio quite a bit. So.
I think this was a unique period for them. This album and the one after it, they had that kind of sound that was really working, and people were really digging. And I'm not sure what happened, but...
Huh. What do I have 2 covers in here? I don't remember.
2 of the same covers?
No, 2 different covers. 2 different
that's
booklets.
Weird. And that's my one complaint about this album is the cover album. The album art blows, in my estimation. I don't like it at all.
I never understood why it was bitmapped.
I guess...
I mean, obviously
digital art wasn't what it is today in 1990. I don't know why they chose that.
But even in 1990, I knew it was odd looking, but I'm sure they did it on purpose. But
I don't know. I don't know why they did it, but I've never cared for it. I think if it didn't have that pixely look to it, I probably would like it better. But it just always looked rushed. Whatever. Queensryche Empire, huge album, really.
We're in our top 5 now.
I think we're just about there. That was number 5. Oh. Number 4. It was probably a massive album for both of us.
Oh, yeah.
I think.
3rd album from this band.
Oh, so into this album.
I was too. Now, a lot of people called, back then, I remember people calling them a Christian band. They were never really, they're a mainstream band. But they had a sound.
They were a band of believers, I would say that.
At the time they were.
Yeah.
Yep. But they had a sound unlike any other, really. I didn't think they sounded like anybody else.
It was retro, but it was also fresh.
Yeah, it had the massive grooves.
Yeah.
It had these unusual vocals. Well, Doug's vocals were very soulful, and I love his voice. But
Ty Tabor was very melodic.
Melodic, almost Beatlesque.
But
his sound.
Together, they had those Beatles harmonies for sure.
Yep.
And I remember, I think the first track I ever heard was "It's Love," and I was like, "Wow, what the hell is this? I love this. Oh, it's love."
Yeah. Mr. Wilson, Moan
Yep.
Jam. That's it. That is exactly what it is. A jam.
It is. It's awesome.
Some great guitar playing in there. 6 Broken Soldiers. Just again, soulful song. Very
and very thoughtful lyrics.
Yes,
as
I'm
well.
trying to think of
I'll never get tired of you.
I can't think of the right word to describe 6 Broken Soldiers, but it's not a ballad.
No, it's
I don't know how to explain it.
It's hard. It's very mindful music. It's very intelligent music. It's very well done, very well played. The delivery is very passionate. What's another great? Legal Kill is the closer, and that's a great track.
I mean, a lot of people call it progressive metal too, or progressive rock,
Sorta.
and they had the progressive sound too. And they very
Sorta.
And the last song, "Legal Kill," I always really liked too. And if I'm not mistaken, wasn't that an abortion song?
Maybe, I'm not sure,
But,
it
I
could
mean,
be interpreted that way. I think
probably. But anyhow, kind of appropriate for what's been going on the last few weeks. But and then the title track is fantastic.
Yeah.
So this easily could have been.
And you got to show the back cover. I used to have this image hanging on my fridge for years.
I love that picture.
I loved it. I cut it out of my CD long box
Oh yeah.
that I had, and
Yeah. I've always. This is one of those covers.
have you ever looked at those?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. It's one of those albums that has all this like it from the distance. It just looks like lettering. It's
Yeah, but it's all these etchings in the letters. It's like it almost tells a story.
It's one of those things you can just like stare at while you're listening to the music and just it's just so much. Yeah,
that's straight out of the '70s, and really this sound is harkening back to stuff that you heard in the '70s, but it's got a modern edge to it.
Definitely. Yeah, it's heavy.
Oh yeah, but it's not.
It's down-tuned, so it's got that heavy sound to it.
But I can't really comfortably say that they're heavy metal. There's metal elements, for sure.
For sure.
But they're a bit more proggy than... It's weird. It's hard to tell. Every band's unique, especially bands.
They have a groove, too.
Yeah, they definitely are groovy.
So, anyhow, yeah, this one...
Loved this album. For years,
both of us, it had to be in the top 5.
Oh, yeah.
So we're on number 3?
Yeah, we are now number 3. Oh, boy. This was a big one, too. These are fun to talk about because we were right into them.
Yeah, this album's great.
All right, so this band was kind of reborn with this release, and they decided to go with the self-titled album, even though they'd already had a self-titled album in 1984.
Which everybody calls Psalm 9
Psalm
these days.
9. So they retroactively retitled it Psalm 9,
Yep.
so as not to confuse it with this one. And Trouble was one of the Sabbath disciple bands, along with St. Vitus and Pentagram, and they really upped their sound on this one and their production.
Yeah, well, they...
Really,
Who produced it? It was
Rick Rubin.
Rick Rubin, who also produced Slayer at the time,
Danzig.
and Danzig.
Yep.
And
And he did a lot of rap stuff before he came to producing, more heavier bands too. But this album, I remember hearing Psychotic Reaction. That was like the first video on MTV, and I'm going, oh my god, I want to sound like Trouble. I want to sound like Trouble. I want to. That's the direction I want to go in.
so those first three albums were very much, people would call them doom metal. I don't know that they were doom metal, but they got.
I think doom is a retroactive tag.
Yeah, this here was more of a. There was more groove. There was more.
Still
bit of a-
firmly steeped in Sabbath for sure,
but had a heavy '70s vibe.
which they got more into as they
These
went.
days, people call it stoner rock, but I just.
It's hard to.
For me, it's just Trouble. It sounds like Trouble to me. Nobody else sounds like Trouble. And man, the guitar tone, he's got such a unique tone. You just know it's.
I remember reading interviews with James Hetfield saying they played with Trouble, and they were talking to Bruce Springsteen, Bruce Franklin, about how do you get that sound out of your amp, and he's kind of coaching them on what he was doing to get that tone, which is cool. I think that's pretty neat.
Yep, great album. That's
And R.I.P. Eric Wagner.
honestly, this could have been number 1, number 2 for me as well. I mean,
But you'll see why we picked. I think you'll agree with our number 1 and number 2 picks as well.
yeah, there's not a bad song on here.
Nope.
The
Excellent
Wolf
all
is
the way
great.
through.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say it's my favorite Trouble because I really like those.
It's just it's probably one of their most solid albums. It's
Yeah.
so well put together.
But I just love Trouble, the first Trouble album so much.
I do too.
And
I think my favorite cuts At the End of My Days for sure. I love it. Psychotic Reaction, love it. R.I.P. is cool. Black Shakes of Doom. Heaven's on My Mind. It's just a great album all the way through.
Yep.
It really is. Awesome. Trouble.
and I'll say that I think the follow-up is as good.
Manic Frustration?
Mhm.
Yep. Definitely.
They're definitely getting more. I was beginning to hear more Beatles influences in there too.
Yes, definitely. They even did a couple of Beatles covers
Yeah, they did.
at some point.
All right, so number 2 and number 1.
Why this album didn't keep metal thriving in the 90s. I mean, when I first heard this, I was like, oh my god, metal is back. Wow. The Painkiller video, I was just like, damn. After Turbo and Ram It Down, which I liked, but they were definitely watered down. Wow, they come screaming back with this one.
And again, there's not a song in here I don't like.
What an album.
I mean, it starts off with something that leans close to thrash or speed metal. It's
Yeah.
not. I wouldn't call it thrash, but it definitely has a
It's
speed metal
damn
sound.
close.
And the drumming was
Oh,
so improved over Dave Holland. I mean,
Yeah, Scott
Travis. was
Scott Travis,
a beast.
yes.
Formerly of Racer X before this.
And now he's been with them longer than anyone else.
Yep.
I
And
mean-
he was also with Fight too. So
Yep, that's right. And he's a tall mofo. He's like taller than me. I'm 6'4", and he's got to be like 6'9" or something. But big old lanky drummer motherfucker. He's awesome.
and he's actually the only member of Priest I ever got to meet in person. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, they played a show. It was when nobody cared about him. They played a show at a little club in Albuquerque with Ripper singing for him, and he came out afterwards. And I just shook his hand and it's a great show.
That's
that was
cool.
the end of it, but it was still cool. I was,
I mean, just when you think Priest has gone away, they come back and they just punch you in the face with something like this. Wow. I mean, it was quite, at the time, it was quite the swan song for Rob Halford because, he left after this one, but...
Hell Patrol was on here. That was a Between the Hammer and the Anvil. A
great
Touch
one.
of Evil was a more melodic track.
That was one of the first singles.
That's actually, you could have put that song on Screaming for Vengeance and it wouldn't have.
Yeah.
It would have fit perfectly. Battle Hymn was great.
Leather Rebel.
Leather Rebel. Yeah, that's just not a bad song on here.
It's straight up. It's just like, oh, you thought Priest was done? Here, have this.
Yeah, and the cover's great too.
It is. It's
It's
just
one of their
it's
it's one of their most iconic covers.
it's classic.
One of them. They had a lot of iconic covers, but that
And
was
you know, of
definitely
course, the Painkiller was that continuing character that Rob had been writing about since like Exciter on the Stained Class album.
yeah, it was the hero. The hero
it's kind of
overcoming,
like Savior that's burning across the sky and burning away every evil thing,
destroying evil. Yeah. And it's funny because they're considered one of those bands that was evil. They were one of the evil stepchildren that the PMRC hated.
But not if you really listen to what he was saying.
And they're the ones that got pulled into court for,
Yeah, that was freaky.
So, yeah.
Anyway, number one.
Number one.
I hope you agree with us. We agreed on it pretty readily.
Immediately.
Right off the bat. Rest in peace, Megadeth. Dave is back with a brand new lineup. Well, the two Daves are still there, of course. Brand new drums, brand new second guitar player, and their most successful album to date. Dave is clean. I mean, the band's clean. They look healthy, and they're just... I remember hearing Holy Wars on the radio prior to the album coming out. It was like a Z-Rock premiere. And I was so damn jealous of the sound they had on that song. I'm just like, oh my God, I hate this. But it was so good. The whole album is awesome from start to finish.
I think this put them to a whole new level.
It did.
Not only a level musician-wise and production-wise, but popularity-wise as well.
Oh, yeah. I remember seeing them on talk shows playing Hangar 18. Like Arsenio Hall and shows like that.
Yep.
And Hangar 18 is one of those songs, I can't get enough of it. Maybe I've heard it a million times, but I love it.
Yep.
I don't know why. It just kicks in with that da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Love it. Uh-oh. What's that mean? Did you see that?
Yeah, we just ran out of chip.
You mean this is not being recorded?
I think it was a warning.
All right, well, this is number one. I mean, do you have anything else you want to say about it?
No, actually we're running out of batteries. What we're doing. So
Okay.
We've been talking for a long time.
So it opens up with an epic classic, Holy Wars, The Punishment Due, and it closes with an epic classic, Rust in Peace, Polaris.
Yep.
It's like awesome, like Rain and Blood. It's got these bookends that
and then everything in between is great.
Killer.
Yep.
It's just killer. Rust in Peace.
Megadeth, one of my all-time favorite albums from Megadeth.
Yep.
To this day. So, well, that's it. That's our top 35 for 1990.
Sorry, it took us 2.5 years.
We're running out of batteries, so we got to fly. But definitely leave a message below. And